have a capacity to do more and to evolve. So it doesn't need to be an external change. It can be a very internal change or a more private change. And that's still very meaningful.
So, hello. Welcome to the You Are a Lawyer podcast. Rachel Clar, how are you today?
Hi, Kyla. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Rachel, you and I connected on LinkedIn, one of my favorite places to connect with other lawyers. But would you tell the audience what you do every day and what is your background?
Sure. I am a lawyer turned businesswoman turned entrepreneur for women lawyers. I have a business called Interconnected Us, and we take women lawyers from hiding to making waves. And so when you start out, you get a snippet of my process. I've got a Rainmaking Roadmap where I help people, solve one problem and get a tight strategy in a 3-hour intensive, how to make it rain, meet their clients. And then they go to a mastermind where really we do a deep dive and we're, really building people's confidence and acumen and how to use their network.
Yeah. And it's called Interconnected
Us.
Interconnected Us, just like your email. Okay.
Yeah.
So what made you create this business? Did you always want to be a business owner?
I did. I come from a family of small business owners, but they are all men. And, I was always sitting there like, damn, I've got a doctorate in persuasion and influence. Like, this is ridiculous. And, being a good girl, and for a lot of years, when I was married, I was the breadwinner and so on. And so, staying in a more traditional posture as someone's employee was the right fit. But then there came a time where I was like, I need to step out myself and stop hiding. So, here I am. And really what I found was that in the side, like on the nights and weekends when I was working these day jobs in real estate development, I was coaching my friends who are women lawyers, and they were largely women lawyers, and they were going for bigger jobs, more visibility, starting to bring in more business and ask for more. And I'm passionate about growth, and I wanted to do that full time.
Yeah. You and I are both very lucky in that way, that the thing we actually enjoy doing is the thing that we get paid to do. Yes. Right? When I used to hear people say, do what you love, I'm like, do what pays the bills for the most part, right? And I remember asking my mother, and I'm like, did you always do what you wanted to do? And she was like, that didn't exist. When we were having you guys in the 80s, like, you just weren't thinking about that. You didn't know how other people were living. She's like, a lot of this is newer, and then the pandemic kind of ramped it up even more because we really started seeing how people were living. Mm-hmm. So Rachel, what made you even start informally coaching other women when they would ask you?
Oh my goodness. So I come from a family, like I said, of small business owners. And so watching, who are all men. And so watching the men sit around the table and take up so much space, and watching the women make the men comfortable and in a variety of ways, women who are deeply educated and powerful themselves. But, these gender roles, it would drive me crazy. It still does. And I would, then when I speak with my girlfriends the ones who are lawyers, they have a, as we have a degree in how to persuade others and to command the room and win an argument. And so watching them be mistreated, hearing their pain and hearing that like fear, that they have about going bigger, and that, I think that black and white mentality in the adversarial system can really be taken outside of the profession and become a bigger problem in how we see the world. And so I think that fear, that again, that it's that black and white thinking, but it changes. And I think women lawyers can sometimes get stuck in fear. It paralyzes all of us. I'm no different, but I just couldn't keep my mouth shut. I would say, do you want my opinion, or, can I help?
Are you just venting, or are you looking for a solution?
Yeah, exactly. I'm also a monster networker. And so that's part of the business name as well. Like Interconnected Us is because I see such abundance when I look out there. It's all right there. It's just a matter of how we use the network to get more access, to get the mentors they want, to really feel deeply supported and that their success is inevitable. I'm passionate about.
Yeah. So you were already doing it anyway. You were literally telling everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're lawyers, we're advice givers. So I was like, do you want to, I've since learned that I should wait for them to approach me. but I couldn't keep it in. And they, seemed to appreciate it. They were making moves that was stepping into their power, getting promotions and going for it and being more visible and all the things that I know you're passionate about as well, obviously.
I definitely am. So, Rachel, you mentioned making waves. You were teaching these women how to make waves. I'm a big book reader. I love reading books. Have you read the book The Long Game by Dory Clark?
I have not, but I will write it down right now.
So there's an entire chapter where she talks about 4 different waves. She's like, you can be in your growing wave, and then you're in your stretching wave, and then you're just in your working wave. And I thought that was fascinating. She's like, everybody wants to do the same things, but then like sometimes you're more focused than others and blah, blah, blah. Maybe you're in this wave where you're just all about like working and connecting. And then maybe you're in the work where now you're implementing, or that wave when you're implementing.
Oh, interesting. Well, it sounds like she's defining it differently than I do. Like when I say making waves, I'm talking about at the high end of the spectrum, people who are really senior in their visibility and in their comfort with, kind of owning their place and taking up a lot of space. Those are women who want to make big changes, like run for president. I mean, all kinds of great things. There's women I know who are, developed really cool types of AI, women who want to change the rules of professional conduct. I had a conversation about that yesterday. I mean, women who have like really big ideas. That's kind of the extreme end, women who are like, very advanced and growing their circle and are ready for something very societally, has a societal impact.
Yeah, so it could be even in like the literal way, like a solid, calm pool, and then they're jumping in and making the waves. It could be like that too.
Yeah. At first all of us start out, right? Small. We don't have a lot of influence. We know people, but they just know us in our, in a very small capacity. And, we hopefully see something really beautiful in ourselves. And there's a voice inside that's believing in that. And so, I want to give people a place where they can come together and learn from me as well. And, move along that spectrum and start to do the thing that they're, sitting there dreaming about. We don't want to go to our deathbed thinking about this. We want to have looked back and been like, at least I tried. Hopefully I also did.
At least I tried. But, that part is hard. And especially for lawyers. Mm-hmm. You've said this one curse word a couple times, the word change. I did not understand that word for a long time. I was like, I'm not allowed to change. I paid for the LSAT. I moved for law school. Why would I do all of this and change?
Oh, wow.
Do you find that a lot of your clients are ready for that change? I mean, that's why they reach out to you, because they're finally like, I'm doing it. Let's go.
Yeah, and they don't all want to leave the practice by a long shot. The vast majority want to stay where they are. They might even want to stay in their same job, but they want to start bringing in more business. They want to call the shots in their career. And I love that. I'm all about that. So how do they have more powerful conversations? I love teaching about, what I call external boundaries, but also internal boundaries, how we talk to ourselves. Both of those are guided by kindness is like one of the, very high level.
I believe that lawyers are very creative. I think from the way that we find case law to the way that, you can respond to this email without saying all the things you really want to say, right? We're really flowery with our words and we know how to get things done. But also it was hard for me to be like, I want to do something different. Like I remember even when I thought about making this podcast, but even when it started to be successful and my first sponsor was like, hey, what are you doing for sponsors? I was like, oh, I'll think about it in a couple seasons. They were like, no, I mean, like, can I pay you now to advertise my business? And I had to like have long conversations with my therapist. Like, am I allowed to be my own boss? Am I allowed to have someone pay me? Like,
oh, I love that. I also love that you said therapist on air. That's fantastic. I love when people normalize all of that. That's fantastic. Through it. I mean, I posted about it the other day. I was on a podcast where it was recorded on video and I said to him as a joke, but not totally joking, like, hey, when you post the clip, please make sure the opening shot has me looking good. and I had this whole laugh about it. And then I posted about it. Like, look, we're all on this journey. I mean, being visible means being vulnerable, right?
It does. I think creating means being vulnerable. I think asking for help with Interconnected Us means being vulnerable, right? Because at least for me, I was a high achiever and that was what made me want to go to law school. And now, I was a first generation college graduate, which means I definitely was a first generation law school graduate.
Yeah.
And so I was already successful and I was like, oh, I think I'm going to do this. What? Why? But like, I had to reconcile it with myself before I could even tell anybody else because, it's like, I didn't see many people that did this. I know a couple people who owned businesses, but they weren't successful or they didn't make any money. And I didn't want that to be my story. So I was like, that's why I found a business scaling coach. We were talking about that offline. You know, therapy's definitely helped as well. But like, therapy is maintenance for being alive. Everybody needs it.
I totally agree with that.
Absolutely, 100%. But no, I had.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying I had to get comfortable with the idea that I could change and that I could change my mind, and it doesn't negate my prior decisions, right? The fact that I became a lawyer is not a bad thing, but I can also still do this.
That's so interesting. And I had a similar journey, but I don't frame it as me getting comfortable with the idea that I could change. But it was getting comfortable with risk taking and expanding. You know, I was just in a chapter of my life, feels like another lifetime ago, honestly, but 10, 15 years ago, where I was just, for a variety of reasons, was just like living in a very, you know, in the way others wanted me to be. And I think shedding that required some deep intentionality with the support of a therapist. Yeah. Yeah. But now it's part of what I teach. I mean, you know, we take incremental steps and we rewire our brain one damn neuron at a time, one damn conversation at a time, right? Like it's arduous work, and it's much easier with support from others, whether, you know, one-to-one. I, you know, certainly feel that groups are, you know, where the rubber really meets the road and you go super fast, but yeah.
Yeah. Very, very cool. So Rachel, when you were practicing, what type of law were you practicing?
I practiced really briefly. I worked for a very progressive labor union. And when I wanted to move back home to Western New York, where I live, I started working for a family friend doing bankruptcy law. And pretty quickly, the misogyny and the billable hours and that sort of thing, combined with really my creative spirit. I mean, I wrote down when you said, I believe that lawyers are very creative. I just knew that my highest and best use was not going to be practicing bankruptcy law in this mid-sized firm where I was, you know, told to basically sex it up with my clothes and all kinds of things. Like, it was just so crushing.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. I'm listening to you and I'm like, I would like to find a space where I can be comfortable and be myself and I don't have to create my own business. Like, I would like to find a business that just like accepts me and welcomes me and just loves me. Yes. But I'm like, maybe I have to create that for other people, right? Maybe my assistants and my associates and those people are feeling that from me and then they go create it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm sitting here thinking, well, wait a minute. You should be in my mastermind for women who are making waves. Like, you belong at the top. That's fantastic.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I've had to, that self-talk piece that you said, I had to work on that a lot. I have a tattoo that says progress, not perfection.
Oh my God. We all need that. Absolutely. I use that one as well, but my version that I use more often is info, not ammo.
Ooh.
You know, kind of related. That. The world has just given you feedback. I don't mean like a boss critiquing you, but I just mean like, oh, that didn't go so well.
Well, it's funny because I've always been like pretty assertive for the most part, but it was only because no one could ever say anything to me that was harsher than what I said to myself.
Exactly.
Right? If I failed a test, oh my goodness, like, oh, like you could never say anything. But then I was like, wait, why don't you flip that and be nice to yourself?
Oh yeah. That rewiring my brain, that has been and really once you realize that that's the linchpin to everything, I've started to notice that is literally what every spiritual teacher is talking about, in cultivating internal kindness. And there's all these different ways to do it, but resetting your relationship with that critic inside. And, you know, you can do it in therapy, you can do it there's all kinds of ways to do it. But I mean, I see it every time when women lawyers are in a space where they are invested in each other, how they will give each other the grace that no one gives themselves, myself included, you know, but I am working on that inner voice. Like, I am personally very focused on that. And I teach it to others.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult thing, right? I just turned 40 this year. And so for years, I've been saying these negative things to myself. So that's not going to switch overnight. Yeah. But with the practice, it does happen. And what I found was a lot of people have been talking about this. To your point, it's called paradigm shifts. It's called mindset. But like, no one really talked about it in a basic way to me until I started doing meditation and affirmations. And I was like, literally just reciting the same thing works. Why didn't y'all just say that?
Yeah.
Why'd you have to call it all these things? Just call it sitting down and just reciting the same thing. Like, that makes sense.
I'm curious if you see it this way. My experience has been there's all these tools out there, And I'm not ready to pick them all up at any given time. It's like, I've got to find the right tool for my personality and with the right timing, right? Like,
Absolutely. I have 3 different methods that I use all the time, and I'm in the basement, so they're not with me. I have financial affirmation cards, which have things on them like, I have everything I need right now, or there's enough in the world for everyone. I'm like, okay, that's good, that's good. And then I have cards which are career based, which those things say things like, I know it feels tough, but nothing's insurmountable. And I'm like, yeah. And sometimes I just flip through, like, that's not the one I need today. This is the one. Sometimes you flip through. But then also I use the Headspace app. And even that one, I just found a message the other day, and it was like a 5-minute therapy or meditation. And it talked about conflicting emotions. I can be so happy to be recording with Rachel, but then also exhausted because I haven't eaten lunch. Like, you can be both.
yes.
And that's okay. And I've been listening to that, especially to date this, but the election's coming up. I've been listening to that all the time because it's like, you can be happy to be alive and devastated for, you know what I mean? The flooding that's happening in the Philippines.
I totally agree. And actually, because you meditate and you use the Headspace app, and I've really gone deep with meditation as well. Can I share one piece about my business that I haven't said publicly yet? So I'm going to say it now. I haven't really explained my logo, which is the Fibonacci dots. And they go, in the Fibonacci series, it's like looking at, for your listeners who aren't familiar, it's like looking at the center of a sunflower or a pine cone, etc. So the logic there is, as you go from, you think you're just working on the outside piece, right? Like where the dots are biggest and darkest. And then you start going in, and it's aligned in a way that's mysterious and divine. We don't understand everything about the Fibonacci sequence. You go in, and then you get to the void in the middle, silence. And you're working on yourself. You go from like your influence externally, but then your inner circle becomes more and more important. And then your relationship with yourself. And you're going to solve that not with always intellectualizing and noise. And then as you start to heal those pieces, then you can really go back out and make big waves. So that's really I feel like it's this little Da Vinci Code thing, and I haven't really explained it to the world. So big reveal on this podcast. Now I get to tell the world. Yeah.
I love it. I think that makes a lot of sense because when I first started therapy, I was pretty stressed out at work. And I was like, hey, I want to talk about my career. Oh my goodness, they're driving me crazy. And she's like, okay, great. Where were you raised? No. We're talking about work. I just want to talk about work and this person. She's like, yeah, are you a middle child? And I'm like, what are you? And she's like, it's all related. We have to talk about all of it.
That's exactly. It's all interconnected, right? We're all interconnected. All of it. It's one human experience. Our stories, right? Like,
so Rachel, I love that you're talking about the Fibonacci code and how every piece of your business was really intentional. How do you feel about being a business owner? I mean, are there more good days than bad days? Or are you like, I love delegating, or what? How are you feeling?
I love it. I'm so touched that you noticed how intentional I am. I'm very, very intentional, and I'm very passionate about personal growth. And to me, running a business is extremely provocative, as I'm sure you know as well, right? So it's unearthed all these things that were buried that I don't know I would have had to confront as an employee. And so quite honestly, selfishly, I've really, really loved the journey. I consider everything I do in the business to be play, and that might be an exaggeration. I consider the vast majority of what I do in the business to be play. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm really, really enjoying it. It's definitely extremely provocative and stressful at moments, but so is life. Like, it's part of being alive. But really, the biggest thing I love about the business is watching women transform. And, I always say I'm here to lift up givers and people who really want to, grow their influence so that they can help others, right? Like, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. So do you think running your business feels like play because you're the expert? And so you're like, oh, I can do this all day.
Yeah, it's tailored around what I love to do and what I'm good at. And so, if I ran a hair salon, I think I would be really stressed out. Like, that's not what I'm good at. That's not what I really care about. If someone, goes long on glossiness or something, like I peter out at some point. I'm very values driven. And I just love watching women step into their power. It absolutely lights me up. And like, who would I want to give my time and talents to more than the women who I feel affinity with, but also any other profession? But we are one where we are literally, like I said, doctorates in growing our influence and persuasion. So we are very well poised to make big waves once we grow our our confidence in our capacity to do that. We start to see ourselves differently. And that's part of who we surround ourselves with. And that's what I do.
Yeah, start to see ourselves differently, and then the confidence can come. Because I find a lot of lawyers are like, oh my goodness, I'm the best here, right? You see them walk into the boardroom, courtroom, wherever, deposition room, and you're like, they're owning it. And then they're in this different space, and they're like, oh, hi, it's just me, right? Because it's like,
100%.
you're confident based on knowledge. The things that you are knowledgeable about, the things that you are the expert in, yeah, you're going to be confident all day long. The new things are the things where you're a little bit shyer.
Yeah. Yeah. So helping women understand themselves, and part of how we learn about ourselves is in relationship with others, right? Like you reflecting back that you see my intentionality. Okay, that helps like strengthen how I think of my unique strengths. So it's really cool. I love how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have two more questions for you. You said that you did enjoy law school and you would do it again. Would you give us a little bit more details about that?
I went to law school with very funny people. We laughed a lot. We laughed a lot. And on an individual level, I don't mean because of the academic experience, but the life chapter, I really stepped into my own skin in a lot of ways. It was further from home, distance wise, but also kind of scale. I was in a much bigger city than I live in, than I grew up in, and that I went to college in. So I would definitely do it again. It changed me for the better. Although I mean, the academic part was grueling.
I always tell people that I would go to law school again and they think I'm silly, but it made me an adult. It really did. I went to law school at 28. So I already had a career. I left making money to go. I just could not stop thinking about it. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And I was a completely different person when I left, but in a good way and in the best way.
I have to tell you, just in getting to know you better today, I love how you embrace that you're an evolving person and have really embraced growth and change, and like hearing that you're, in your third career, and that your business is, the changes it's going through, maybe towards a fourth, and like everything you're doing is just such a wonderful message for other people to hear, really, because we have so much capacity, and we can, not to throw any shade on people who stay in the same workplace, career, all of that. We have a capacity to do more and to evolve. So it doesn't need to be an external change. It can be a very internal change or a more private change. And that's still very meaningful.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I think that this is like the universe giving me all the good vibes back, because I'm the person that reads a great article in a newspaper or like a magazine and writes the author. I'm like, thank you for your article. It's so great.
Oh, I love that.
And so I feel like now it's like all of the stuff coming back to me where I'm like, oh, now I get to do stuff and like people get to say that to me. So thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Rachel, my very last question, and I ask this to everyone. So the podcast audience is like 70% law students and 30% young lawyers. So 5 years practicing or less, who are looking for like different careers or just different options. What would you say to them about what they can do with their law degrees?
Oh my gosh. I love that question. Okay. Being a lawyer means you are a professional storyteller. And as my friend Jennifer Gardner says, she's got a business called the Power Lab. She says, and she's a litigator. She says, whoever tells the best story wins. You're a storyteller. So you take every chapter you've had, both the ones that are externally facing and the internal ones that people might not know about yet, and you integrate that and you become something new. You can always evolve. So when I was in law school, we'd sit around the law school basement. That's where they had us gather. And we'd fantasize about our careers post being a lawyer, and there was someone who wanted to be a teacher and someone who wanted to be a chef and, someone who wanted to be a judge, but, move past practicing. Just don't stop growing and changing. I mean, whatever that looks like for you. And it's all good. We can get so lost in our overthinking and our self-criticism that we're not evolving fast enough or we're not where we should be and all these things. And that's all toxic messaging. That's our conditioning and that's pressures we get, I believe way before law school. But we're here, quite literally to grow and change and to connect with one another and help one another. That's like what feeds our souls. Neuroscience is strong on that.
Yeah. And if you need a push or you need someone to keep you going and motivate you, contact Rachel at interconnectedus.com, because she will be that little boost that you need. Do it. I promise it'll happen. Do it. So
absolutely. And work with Kyla. An incredible podcast business.
Well, what's funny? I was speaking at a conference in October, And they were like, do you want to be a vendor? And I was like, yeah, I'll pay to have a vendor. Okay, what am I going to sell? I created shirts that say podcasters are storytellers and podcasters are artists. And people bought them. And I was like, I don't even have a merch store. They're like, oh, these were great. Where can we find them? And I was like, outside at the table? I don't even have a website. I was like, I just thought of the message and made them. So now I think I need to make some lawyers or storytellers shirts. I can send it to you and your friend.
I love that. Let's do a merch store together. And yeah, I've got some more stuff to tell you offline. You have my wheels turning with all these cool, I just love what you're doing. This is fantastic.
All right, everyone. So thank you so much for listening to the You Are Lawyer podcast. If you didn't know, or if you forgot, this podcast is available on YouTube as well. Simply search You Are a Lawyer. Okay, so until next time, thank you so much, Rachel, and bye, everyone.